G'day and welcome to the Grow a Small Business Podcast. I'm your host, Troy Truen. Each week, we speak with an owner who has grown a business with 5 to 30 team members to something bigger. Diving into their numbers and unearthing the pain they've experienced, we explore what they did to overcome each barrier and what they would do differently from day one. Let's get into it. Welcome everyone. Today we are breaking from the usual format and speaking with a subject matter expert on employee share ownership plans, otherwise known as ESOPs. I'm interviewing Craig West from Succession Plus, advisors on business succession and exit planning on ESOPs. And thanks for your time today, Craig.
Thanks for having me, Troy. It's good to be here.
And you're in sunny Sydney while I'm in sunny Hobart.
Yeah, I am in Sydney. It's raining actually today, but it's been pretty good other than that.
Yeah, I don't think you should be complaining compared to Hobart.
Definitely not.
Let's start with how we know each other. So I first heard about Succession Plus through Michael Dennehy down here at Collins SBA, and then I signed up. I saw on LinkedIn one of the posts that Michael liked about one of your webinars, and I sat in on that about a month ago on ESOPs, and I found it really valuable and intriguing, and thought it'd be great to have you on the cast so other business owners could learn about employee share ownership plans.
Yeah, fantastic. Thanks.
So tell us a bit about your background, kind of industries you work in, and how, maybe start with how people can get in touch with you. What's the best way?
Yeah, look, there's a stack of information on our website, so successionplus.com.au, including a whole stack of, as you said, webinars, white papers, podcasts, recordings, you name it. Yep. There's a stack of content and information on there, so that's probably a good place for most people to start. In terms of my background, I'm an accountant by background. No secrets, I absolutely hated it.
I was going to say, I'm sorry to hear you're an accountant.
Yeah, mate, I just couldn't deal with it. Nothing against any accountants out there. I'm still an accountant and still have a tax agent's license and all that sort of stuff. But
yep.
I just found the compliance and sort of back office accounting style didn't suit me. What I did was left and did a master's degree in tax law, mainly focused on capital gains tax when people sell their business. And so I started to work for about 20 firms, writing letters of advice on the specifics around sale of business. And I just saw over and over and over again pretty bad exits.
Because you can save a shit ton of tax if you structure things well.
Absolutely.
Before you sell the business, but particularly early on, before you really get going or started, or the growth starts. Getting the tax structure right can save. I think my father's mentioned that they kind of got bad tax advice early on in his first business, and they kind of got burnt. So, and I've heard several stories of other friends that have sold out and gone, oh shit, I wish we had have done that differently.
Oh, you can make a big difference if you structure things properly. So I spent a fair bit of time doing that. But what I found whilst doing that was just a real lack of planning around people getting out of their business. There was no such thing as exit planning. Mm-hmm. No one spent any time on it. Everyone left it till too late. And it became a real problem because I actually wrote tax letters of advice where people had sold a business for, say, $5 million and they should have got 8. Or they should have sold it in a better environment, or they should have got a better buyer, or they should have done it on a better term. So I actually started looking at this whole area of exit planning and preparation.
Yep.
I went to the States, did some work over there with the Exit Planning Institute, learned, there's a whole industry over there that focuses on building exit strategies.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah, it's massive. They have a program called Certified Exit Planning Advisor, which I've done.
Yep.
But I did it back in 2011. They've now got, there's literally hundreds of people a year doing that course.
Yep.
To help business owners exit their business successfully. So having done that, I started Succession Plus in 2009, focused on exit strategies, had already done a few employee share plans and knew that at that time they were an interesting sort of combination of exit strategies. There's an interesting balance around how they work for the owner, the buyers, the employees to have a win-win-win.
Yep.
And so that's become a large part of our business. It's not right for every business. We don't do it for everyone, but often there's clients where this particular model can work really, really well.
Yep. Great. So Succession Plus really focuses in on 2 areas. One, the tax effectiveness of employee share schemes, but also, which you've mentioned that is often not thought about until it's too late, is how to exit, how to maximise that financial return from your exit. So they're the 2 areas, the tax/ESOPs, and also thinking about if you are going to exit, when are you thinking how and what you can do to get the maximum value?
Yeah, absolutely. And for most business owners, their business is their major asset. You know, for most of us, it's worth more than our house. It's a big asset. And the reality is if you don't have a strategy and a mechanism to extract that value, it just disappears. So, you know, people need to really think about how do I get that out? Imagine owning a house if you could never sell it and get the money.
Yeah.
I mean, no one would ever do it. But business owners do it all the time.
Yeah, and that's a trap for small business owners because there's not really that much liquidity in the market to be able to sell your business to someone unless you do something about it. You're proactive, you change things, and yeah.
Correct.
Well, let's focus in today on ESOPs. So outline for the audience what ESOPs are and speak a little bit about your most recent book you just released, Build It, How to Get Your Employees to Think and Act Like Business Owners. I've started reading it and I downloaded one of the white papers as well, which I read, which was fantastic. So maybe talk a little bit about ESOPs in the book.
Yeah, look, I wrote the book to give people a better understanding. I think the biggest problem with ESOPs in Australia is a lack of education and information that's easily available. So, you know, the book combines some practical case studies examples where we've worked with clients that have been successful using an employee share plan. It has some academic research. I'm actually partway through doctoral studies on using an employee share plan for succession. So there's a bit of academic heavyweight research around why employee share plans work.
Yep.
And then there's a bit of tax and technical and accounting information as well for those that like to understand how that works as well. So the book was sort of written as an education piece mostly to help business owners understand how this tool works and whether it's applicable for them in their overall planning.
Yep.
In terms of the employee share plans themselves, I mean, in their simplest form, they're just a structure that allows employees to buy equity in the business they work for. The government, there's always been some tax concessions around employee share plans. They were substantially improved back in 2015. Mm-hmm. So there are some pretty generous, for most small businesses, pretty generous tax concessions you can take advantage of when you implement an employee share plan that provide some tax concessions for the business, provide some really generous tax concessions for employees, and therefore make it a little bit more attractive to use an employee share plan because you also get some tax benefits as a bit of a side benefit.
Yep.
We don't focus on the tax benefits. They're like nice to have.
Yeah.
But the real thing is that employees that own shares in the business they work for tend to think and act like a business owner.
Yep.
Which creates different behaviours, different performance improvements, etc. And therefore, you know, everyone at the end of the day is better off. If the business is doing better, the owners are doing better, the employees are doing better, then happy days all round.
Yeah, I love some of the statistics you used in your material, like retention, for example. I think with an ESOP in place, it's something like 9.4 years as opposed to 5.4 years without one. It's almost double. That's phenomenal.
And, you know, the cost of replacing people is really expensive. You know, a $100,000 salary, it costs about $40,000 to replace someone by the time you pay recruitment fees, training, upskilling, lost time and effort and lost intellectual property and knowledge. It's an expensive process. So if we can use this mechanism to keep people on board, why wouldn't you? And
there's also, do you have some numbers around engagement and productivity that ESOPs provide once they're in place?
Yeah, look, the overall number that I use all the time is there's somewhere between 7 and 23% improvement in business performance overall.
Yep.
Now, even if, let's say it's right at the bottom end, it's only 7%. I mean, our economy at the moment's growing, ignoring COVID, but our economy at the moment, you know, it normally grows at 1.5%, 2% a year. So if you can get somewhere between 7 and 23% growth, you're way ahead of the market.
Yeah, and what about engagement?
Well, the stat's actually 200%.
Wow.
So where you've got an employee share plan that's been implemented properly and the employees have been trained, we use a particular program to do that, but where the employees have been trained about employee ownership and how it works, the research says that those employees are 200% more engaged than employees who haven't got that kind of, you know, program. Now, 200% is a ridiculous number. That's massive. You know, lots of businesses out there doing training courses and running workshops to try and get a 5% improvement.
Yep.
And I'm saying, don't worry about that. Jump on this. We're talking 200%. That's big.
That's threefold. Yeah.
Absolutely. It's massive.
And I mean, you obviously, that engagement number, that 200%, you leaned on a lot of international studies to you know, talk to that point, didn't you? So
yeah, I do. And I mean, you know, we've got a little bit of research here in Australia. I'm adding to that at the moment with the work that I'm doing. There's a few others in Australia that have done a lot of work on employee share plans, but they're massive in the United States and Europe. So there's a lot of academic research in those areas, in the UK included. around performance, productivity, staff retention, even simple things like sick days. In most employee share plans, sick days go down by 10 to 20%. Now, it's not a lot, but it's actually a lot.
Yes, it adds up.
10 to 20% doesn't sound very exciting compared to 200. But if you think about a business with, 20 employees and you drop that sick day by 20%, that's a lot of time and money we're talking about there. It's quite substantial.
Yeah. I think some of the questions the audience would be asking right now would be like, how long does it take to implement an ESOP? How much time does it take each year to maintain? And also the costs on both those scenarios, setup and also maintenance, because I think that would put a lot of people off. They think, oh no, they're too complex, too hard, and they're too costly.
Yeah, look, they don't need to be complicated and hard. One of the things that I think we've been able to develop over the last 15 years while we've been doing these employee share plans is a simple way to explain them, design them, and implement them in a business. And that's, that process is probably a 3 to 4 month process from the day we start till the day it's completely done and integrated. And look, for the average business, it's going to cost somewhere around $20,000.
Yep.
And, I often say to people, look, I will guarantee you, hand on heart, you will get improvements in performance, productivity, staff retention worth far more than $20,000. It's guaranteed. If that doesn't happen, then I've done a really bad job of designing it.
Yeah. And what about annual fees and how much time, particularly the owners? I think, they're extreme. Everyone's very busy, so they're cognizant of how much time is going to, in that 3 to 4 months initially, but also annually as well. What kind of time and costs?
Yeah, look, the time and cost ongoing, we do all the admin for clients. So we've got an admin portal. It's online. They can log in, get all the documents they need, download dividend statements, all that sort of stuff we handle for them, because most business owners don't want to deal with any of that, and rightly so. Neither should they. They shouldn't be anywhere near it. The annual cost of running one of these plans is somewhere between sort of $5,000 and $7,000 all up.
Yep.
And that includes, tax and compliance, accounting, admin, all that stuff. Again, as I said, if you don't get a good return on that money, something's very wrong.
Yes, yeah. And in the initial year, so an owner would be 10 to 15 hours they'd need to invest in those 3 to 4 months?
Yeah, probably that. Yeah, probably about that. It's, we do most of the work. There's a workshop they should attend and so on. So there is a bit of time and effort involved, but I think the reward's far better than the time.
And another good point I picked up from your white paper was for owners that they can get small incremental amounts each year of cash out of the business by effectively selling, part of the business to the employees through their ESOPs. Do you want to just maybe explain that?
Yeah, look, that's something that's becoming more popular. I think people are working longer. They're staying around more. Therefore, the idea of getting some cash out of the business before an actual exit or a sale event is really attractive to most people. Now, it might be to pay down some debt or to buy a holiday home they're going to retire to up the coast or whatever it might be. But the tax concessions allow you to take out money from the business on the way through quite tax effectively and quite simply. And it's an easy way to do it. It doesn't cause a drain on the business, and it helps, the employees therefore are buying into the business gradually over time. The owner's able to take some cash off the table tax effectively.
Yep.
It's sort of a win-win for both. If you get that part right, that can work really well.
And I imagine that using an ESOP would also create another option for exit or a path for exit, in that the management team or the employees could eventually end up owning the business over time. That could be another potential exit.
Yeah, and that's becoming more popular as well. We're getting lots of businesses where they're selling down the equity in the business to their employees. Most businesses, mine included, most businesses are dependent on their key people.
Yep.
Where you've got key people locked in, rewarded and incentivized to perform, the business will perform better. And therefore, a gradual sale of the business to those people sort of makes sense. Why wouldn't you do that? It's a logical sale.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess, especially after COVID hit, you'd be very busy, a lot of interest, because this can also be a good mechanism to reward employees in the annual bonus schemes, for example. Rather than giving them cash bonuses or pay rises, you can actually give them more shares, and that conserves cash for the business.
Yeah, and that's an important point. At the moment, during things like COVID, everyone's had a pretty rough year, let's face it. And one of the things that lots of business owners are doing and lots of advisors are telling them is to hang on to their cash. If you don't have to give it away, don't give it away, hang on to it. But you need to reward employees. They've had a pretty tough year as well. So this kind of structure works for both those outcomes. You can preserve a bit of cash. You can still reward the employees. I think the reward of equity in a business is actually more valuable than just cash.
Yeah.
Most people get the cash, it goes into their home loan, or they spend it on a holiday, or they do whatever they do with it. It's pretty much gone. Whereas the equity grant is a bit more of it's an appreciating asset. It can grow over time into something quite valuable. And therefore, the employees, generally speaking, will look at that as a much more viable option.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you have examples of how powerful ESOPs can be for a business?
Yeah, look, I often talk about, and there's actually a video on our website of a company called that I'm actually a director of up in Newcastle, where we implemented an employee share plan about 4 years ago now. They have about 140 staff. It's a consulting firm. They've got offices all around the country, but they've now got about 55 of their employees own shares in the company.
Wow.
So, yeah, it's a big plan. It's worked particularly well over time. They've had employees gradually buying in. The existing managing director and co-founder is still there, and she's still a major shareholder in the business. She's gradually selling down. Their succession strategy is exactly what we were just talking about. They will sell that business to the employees. Now, the good thing about it, but also the downside, is that takes about 10 years.
Yep.
So it's not a fast exit. So, it's important to understand if you're going to do something like this, you need to get involved earlier, not later, and design the plan and implement it, because it can work pretty well. In that business, it's worked pretty well to engage employees, reward them for, they work hard. They've got lots of, these people are all very, very smart, environmental consultants and scientists, and, they're smart people, and rewarding them through this mechanism is just a different way of doing it, but it certainly worked pretty well for them.
Yeah, I interviewed in episode 16, Stephen, and he's in Sydney as well. He invested in a small middleware software company. They ended up listing on the ASX, but a few years before they did, they put a share employee scheme in, and he just raved about how that added so much value to the business. Everyone was aligned, and everyone got a good financial outcome, and he was really pleased with being able to support his team financially and bring them along the journey.
Yeah, and I think that's an important point, the alignment. Most businesses, you've got this us and them type mentality, even though it's not open conflict or anything like that. There's always this little bit of tension between, owners, senior management, and the employees. Well, when you've got an employee share plan and everyone's an owner, that alignment is much, much better.
Yep.
You get people all thinking and acting like business owners because they actually are.
Yeah, I love that tagline in your book. That sums it up really well. Are there any industries or types of businesses or sectors like services use ESOPs more or are better to use them? Any specific?
Yeah, look, I think the first thing is any business where you've got key employees, you really should consider an employee share plan. And that's a lot of businesses, let's face it. It's not industry specific or anything else. Where we see a lot of benefit is typically professional services businesses.
Yep.
So they have always relied on key people to generate income and to deliver services to clients, and to, whether it's accountants, lawyers, financial planners, insurance brokers, architects, they all rely on key people to deliver value.
Yep.
And so an employee share plan in a professional service firm can really work to lock those people in, reward them, and incentivize them to better performance.
And what's one thing you think business owners do poorly in this area of, I guess, employee share schemes, but engagement and etc.?
Yeah, look, I think there's two things actually. One is they leave it till too late.
Yep.
The other one, and look, Australian business owners have always had this mentality. It's partly what makes us successful, but we've got this very DIY, she'll be right, mate type mentality.
Yeah.
And it's a dangerous trap. Most people go into business because they're particularly good at one thing. So you go into an air conditioning business because you're a really good air conditioning, fridge mechanic, right?
Yep.
Doesn't make you a particularly good business owner or a strategist or a financial analyst or anything else. And those skills are lacking. And so, Australian business really should look at investing money into getting the right advice around them.
Yeah, experts. And that comes from Michael Gerber's The E-Myth Revisited book.
Absolutely.
Technician, manager and entrepreneur. And a lot of technicians start their own business and they stay at that technician level. They never really develop themselves as managers or as entrepreneurs, business owners, to focus on these things and get the right advice. And they try to do everything themselves because that's the way technicians obviously are wired.
Yep. And look, it's a difficult challenge for most people. I've got a client here, he often makes me laugh because, I sit down with him, he's got 100 people, he's turning over tens of millions of dollars, but he often says to me, mate, I'm just a good fridge mechanic.
Yeah.
He's running an air conditioning business that services major clients, does big developments. It's highly successful business, but he often says to me, mate, I'm just a fridgie. And it's a big difference. Those skills are completely different to running a business and Absolutely. A team of 100 people.
Yeah. And tell us about the win-win-win model you focus on when designing an ESOP for a business.
Yeah, look, I think one of the things that you can really make work well, if you design the employee share plan properly, it should be a win-win-win scenario. There's lots of books written about negotiating to win and all that sort of stuff. This is about creating an environment where everybody involved in the plan wins. So by that I mean, certainly the original shareholders or founders should be in front.
Yep.
If the plan's designed properly. The employees should be in front. They'll come out better off. The business should be better off. And then lastly, the stakeholders, so customers, suppliers, those people should be better off as well. Now, if you can design the plan properly, and we've got quite a few examples where this has worked really well, you should get that win-win-win scenario.
Yep. And why do you think this model is so popular with baby boomers?
And I think baby boomers are interesting creatures. I'm not quite one, but I certainly deal with them all day, every day. The biggest problem that baby boomers have got is, our health system and medicine and so on is so much better than it was 100 years ago.
Yep.
The average, age of life expectancy 100 years ago was pre-retirement. People didn't live long enough to retire, is the reality. Back in, 1920, that was the reality.
Right.
Today, the life expectancy is, 87, 88, depending on what numbers you're looking at.
Yep.
Therefore, people are going to retire and they're going to live for another 20 years.
Yep.
Now, for most baby boomers, that's a bit scary.
Mm.
And most of them, therefore, are not retiring at 65. They're staying on for longer. Unfortunately, they've grown up in an environment where they've been very controlling of the business. They're hands-on. A lot of them are control freaks, let's be honest.
Yep.
And that's not a great environment for employees to look at in terms of succession, to go, well, this guy's going to stay here till he's 70.
Yeah.
He doesn't let me make any decisions. And I'm saying guy because it's typically the males that have this problem.
Yes.
Not saying that females sometimes don't, but it's certainly males are very common here. And therefore, that sort of baby boomer generation is very reluctant to leave the business. They're very reluctant to sell. They want to hang on for far too long. They tend to leave things too late. Now, the employee share plan works particularly well because it's not actually a one-off event where you exit. It's actually a very gradual, slow sell down. So if you're a baby boomer looking to sell, this is nowhere near as threatening as sign here, I'm going to sell your business next month.
Yeah.
It's a gradual release of both ownership, income and control, which is much more manageable then.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Craig. Yeah. And professional development resources you'd recommend around ESOPs? Obviously, your own books. You've got your podcast. Any other resources people can look to?
Yeah, look, I think there's a couple of really good. I've read. It's a little bit heavier academic focused than the book that I've written. There's a book called Incentivizing Employees by Landau, O'Connell and Ramsey. That's a really interesting read because it's got a lot of academic research around what triggers employee behaviour. There's also a book out of the United States by a guy called Brad Hams, who's no longer around, unfortunately, called Ownership Thinking, which talks about the psychology and culture of employees becoming owners. So those two are quite valuable. There's a lot of stuff on our website, as you said, podcasts, webinars, etc., around employee ownership. But certainly have a look at it, talk to people who've got an employee share plan or been in one, and just get some experience around how and why it might work for your particular business. Yeah,
that's a good point. Owners listening should reach out to those that have implemented employee share schemes and get their advice and their experience, absolutely. And those two books sound wonderful. I'm going to add them both to my list for right now. All right, Craig, we're on to our final 5 questions. What do you think is the hardest thing in ESOPs for a small business?
I think the hardest thing is just committing to get it done.
Yeah.
I've had a number of clients where we've given them a proposal, they've waited for whatever reason, mucked around, not gone ahead, and then suddenly they say, I don't need it now, that employee's left.
Right. Yeah.
You go, man, if you did it before that, the employee wouldn't have left.
Yeah.
Maybe. Not always, but maybe.
Yeah.
So really, if you're going to go down this road, commit to it, get it happening and get on with it. The cost up front, you should get that return back well within 12 months and a far greater return over the longer term.
Absolutely.
So just get on with it.
And favourite ESOPs book you'd recommend, if there's any others other than the 2 you've just mentioned a minute ago?
No, probably just the 2 that I mentioned. They're sort of the key.
Yep. Do you love talking small business growth with other owners? We have a vibrant online community from many industries around the world. Plus, we regularly add new tools and resources for community members and host 2 webinars a month to help you grow your small business. growsmallbusiness.com. And what's the one thing you'd say to a small business owner starting out in their growth journey on day one around this field?
Yeah, look, I always quote Steve Covey. The second habit in 7 habits is begin with the end in mind.
Definitely.
And that means have a very clear picture of what you're trying to build. What is it? And a bit of detail around it, and that's not just the goal setting sort of idea of what you want to build. It's more about be very clinical. I'm building this business to build it up so I can sell it for $5 million when I turn 60 and then retire.
Yep.
And if you get that clear around what your exit strategy is, then that's where the big money's made, let's face it, firstly. And secondly, you then can make informed decisions all the way through your business journey with that goal in mind.
To get you on the path to get
Absolutely.
There. And what's the best way to get started with ESOPs or any exit strategy?
Yeah, look, the best way to get started is begin with the end in mind, have a clear goal of what you're looking at, and get some advice. Talk to your accountant, talk to your financial planner, talk to a lawyer, talk to a succession planning expert. Get some ideas around what's possible and what you need to do to prepare. Because otherwise, you blunder away for 20 years building a business and then suddenly you can't exit or sell it. It's terrible when you see businesses like that because the owners have spent so much time, effort, blood, money, tears, blood, sweat and tears, as they say.
Yep.
And you don't get to realise it in an exit. That's a real shame.
And the other sad thing I often see is business owners don't early on invest in acquiring the knowledge of how a business is valued and who may be their potential suitors that come along and buy them. So they have this false idea in their head the way that they need to build the value up in their business, and then 20 or 30 years later they go to sell it and they get pretty much nothing for it because they've either been focusing on the wrong things to generate the value in the business or not focusing at all on being deliberate.
Absolutely. And look, it's just an important part of business. We get so caught up in the day-to-day aspects of running the business and paying the payroll and lodging the BAS and doing all the stuff we've got to do. We just forget about this stuff, and it's absolutely critical. This is where the big money's made. If you get this right, this is where you cash in at the end and fund retirement or fund your next venture or whatever it is that you're going to do. Yeah.
Well, let's finish, Craig, with a favourite quote if you have one.
My favourite quote is probably begin with the end in mind.
Yep.
But I also, I was telling someone the other day, I quote Warren Buffett a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Warren Buffett's obviously a pretty smart investor, and a lot of what he says is around stock market and investment, but a lot of it applies to business as well. I saw a quote the other day where he was talking about risk management, which obviously during COVID has become quite important. And the quote was simply, it's not until the tide goes out that you see who's been swimming naked.
Yeah, I've seen that. I love that one.
Yeah, which is really interesting view around risk management and continuity planning. I mean, succession is a little bit different to that, but it's very closely related.
Yeah. The sage of Omaha, they call him, and for good reason. Yeah.
That's it.
Well, thanks for your time today, Craig. I think the audience got a lot of value out of what you shared with us today, and I'm sure a few people will reach out. Definitely check out your website, your white papers, podcast, and you've got a couple of books now that you've written. So I really appreciate you coming on the cast.
No problem at all. Thanks for having me. It's been great.
That's it. Thanks for listening. Please leave a review in iTunes or whatever platform you listen to us on. It means more small business owners will find our cast and help people with their business growth journey.